Alright, we should be live. We're back. We're working on Arabella, Abandoned Doll. Here she is, in case you need a reminder how she works. Uh, just went and voted, because it's election day in the US, and the nice thing about being in New Jersey is I have absolutely no control over who the president is, so I don't have to worry about that. Because my vote is purely symbolic at that point for that one. It's the senators and congressmen and any local elected officials that actually I have any control over, and therefore B will affect my life in a way that voting actually matters. So anyway, moving on. I hate talking about politics. Like, rather do anything else, especially Magic. Although Magic has not been particularly happy lately either. Oh my god. The whole Secret Lair Marvel characters thing was it was bad. I have never had this much trouble giving my money to Wizards for a product that I ostensibly want and am willing to pay for. I didn't even get the one I actually wanted. I did want the foil ones, and I would have liked to have gotten the Arcane Signet while we were at it, since I'm spending that much money. But, and I was there literally when it went live, and got in line as fast as I could, and I still did not get them. I had to get the non-foil versions, and I almost didn't get those. So yeah, that needs to get fixed. That was terrible. That was abysmal. Um, yeah, we need to go back to the print to order. I was way more okay waiting 6 months to get my cards, and but being able to order them when I felt like it, instead of having to do it that second. And I was also way more okay with actually being able to get the things I wanted rather than have them sell out before I can. Like, literally, I am watching the thing count down to when they go live. As soon as it switched over, I clicked on the thing and went to cart to check out, and I did not get it. Like, this is PS5 launch day level of how do I not get the thing I am literally there for the second it goes live. How did you mess this up this badly? Like, the website crashed. They had to put a stop on it for a while. um, when they resumed, I did not get out of line, because when they resumed, it started working again. And I waited. It started at like 11 o'clock, I believe, my time, and at 3 p.m. I was finally able to try and confirm my purchase, only to be told that not that it was sold out, it said temporarily unavailable. And my response to the phrase temporarily unavailable on the description for the foil set of all 5 products, um, I try not to curse on this channel, so I won't repeat what I said, but my reaction to that was visceral, and it kind of shredded my throat the second time it happened. So the second time, when I finally decided that no, this really meant they did not have it, and this was their way of saying it without going, well, we know we're out of stock. The issue was, I'm sure that it's like, okay, it looks like we're out of stock, and we don't want to confirm anybody else's thing until we know how much we have. And so I tried to put all of the non-foil ones in there, because I have literal every Magic card ever printed, like at least one version of it. So I was not going to not have these 5 highly sought after legendary Marvel characters if I'm going to keep buying Magic cards at all. So I put the non-foil bundle in my basket, which fortunately did not kick me out of line and make me start over again, because otherwise I would not have gotten anything. Um, but then it said that one was temporarily unavailable, and the sound that came out of my voice that came out of my mouth shredded my vocal cords. So, um, but I was able to add all 5 of them individually and actually confirm the purchase. So, honestly, I think that, like, I've been at a tipping point for a while now where I kind of don't want to still be playing Magic in paper. Like, I don't really get to play it much in paper to begin with, and, um, like, the pre-releases are the only time I get to actually sit down and play with other people in a gaming store with, playing limited, and which is my favorite thing to do besides Commander. In fact, technically limited is my favorite format. Like, Commander is my favorite constructed format. So, but yeah, so I've been very depressed about that. It's been like about a year now. It'll be a year when we get to whatever set lines up with Thunder Junction from the previous year. So we're only like a couple months away from me not having played Magic outside of the pre-release for like a year now. So that's been very depressing and has been a major factor in why I think maybe it's time to sell everything and stop playing Magic in paper at least. Like, I'll probably still play Arena because I still like Magic. I love the game, but if I'm not playing it and I'm sitting on all of this money that's not only not doing anything for me, but kind of in a more tenuous state ever since the whole negative reaction to the Rules Committee debacle. There's been a whole lot of maybe I should just stop playing paper Magic, and things like this, like, if I could not get these cards and I had to pay, like $50+ per card on eBay in order to get them, just for the single card, not for the entire set, I think that would have been the last straw. So, I almost quit Magic yesterday. Because the whole thing is that I have every card since I've been playing long enough, and when they first announced The Walking Dead, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go on a bit of a rant here because of all this. When they first announced The Walking Dead, way back when, like the Secret Lair Walking Dead, that made me very viscerally angry. Not just because I hate Universes Beyond, like that was another factor, but also the idea that they were printing cards that you could not ever get at the time. Like, they went and fixed this in theory. I don't know how they're fixing it now because they don't have the list cards anymore in sets. I'm going to imagine that maybe one day we will get all of these cards in a Marvel theme set or something like that, where people can actually get their hands on them that missed out on the Secret Lair sale. But so the idea that there were cards that were tournament legal that you could never have opened in packs is one of the things. I've played a lot of collectible card games over the years. I have cards from at least, let's see, Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Doomtown, the Deadlands card game, the Decipher Star Wars card game. I played the X-Files card game, the Score DBZ card game. What other ones do I actually have cards for? Try to think if there's any other ones I have cards for. Like, so that's 7, and I played the Inuyasha card game because it was popular for like 3 months at one of the places I was playing at, and the rules were simple, and I actually almost won their pre-release for like their 3rd set or something, without ever having played the game before, just because the rules were so simple. And I opened like the 1 per case card from that set, so like I had Inuyasha, like his demon form, which was like the rare card from that set. So I do have cards from that somewhere still. I'm trying to think if I actually have any other card games where I bought cards for them to play them. Because I've played like 4 or 5 other card games. I played the WWF/WWE card game. but I never actually bought cards for it. Same for Warlord. Like I just borrowed people's decks and whatnot, or built decks out of their like stray cards because I like playing collectible card games and I'm actually pretty good at it. So I haven't tried any like the newer stuff because after years of doing this and getting into other card games, I don't have the money to get into other card games. Magic has been relentless in its release schedule lately, and I barely have the funds to keep up with that, so I cannot get into another card game, which is why I haven't touched Lorcana. I never really had any interest in One Piece, but so I've played a lot of card games, and I know what it's like to play a card game where somebody has a card you literally could never have gotten because you weren't at the event that it happened at. And it is miserable when that card is amazing and powerful. Some of the cards, like, I played before eBay was really a thing, and trying to play against people that have cards that you could never have gotten because you weren't at the event and there's no online store really that you can go to find these things, and if you ever found one in the wild, they usually, like, it's literally how much do you want for this, like, pick a number and that's what it's worth, because they are that rare, and any number that you say, it's like, if I disagree with you, I just don't own the card now, and I never will. So I know what it's like to not be able to get a card for the game that you enjoy playing, and then get absolutely thrashed by that card. Because it's actually an incredibly powerful tournament caliber card, and like, I own everything in Magic because I want to be able to play whatever deck I want to be able to play. Like, you know, what's good in the format, because I can build that. Technically, I can't because I don't have 4 of some of the cards. Like, I cannot build a Bazaar aggro deck in Vintage because I only have 2 Bazaar Bagdads. But, you know, I'm halfway there. I only have 1 Candelabra of Tawnos and 1 Tabernacle. I think those are like the 3 most expensive cards that I don't have a playset of and therefore would have trouble running. Like, I would actually have to drop serious money if I needed to build the deck. But everything else I'm good on. Like, I can play any other thing I want in any format, and I like being able to do that. In case you haven't noticed by the way I build my commander decks, I like being able to play whatever card I think is good in the deck. Like, I have at least 1 copy of it, so I can build the deck, and I can run it in Commander, and I have fun with it. Not having access to a card, therefore, makes me very, not, like, it's one of those things, I hate that feeling, like, if I wanted to, I could not play this. You know, I don't actually own it, I can't actually run it, and a long, long time ago, like 1993, 94, I think it was 93, but it might have been 94, there was a convention, I think they're in Georgia, I think it's Dragon Con in Georgia, there was a convention where Wizards of the Coast, like, still new, like, collectible card games are still new. They were, you know, some people were starting to see how Magic was going and were starting to make their own things, but, like, Magic is still the thing right now, and they released a card that was genuinely terrible. It's called Nalathni Dragon. It's a weird looking card because it's a little tiny dragon floating next to, like, this monkey sage or something who's sitting on the top branch of a small tree, and it's a bad version of Dragon Whelp from, like, Alpha Beta Unlimited. So, here, real quick. I think that's how you spell its name? Yeah. Alright, so it's this artwork. They reprinted it in Mystery Boosters too, as one of the things. Yeah, it's from Dragon Con. So this is the Nalathni Dragon. So it has flying and banding. So it has worse stats than Dragon Whelp, and it has the same limited fire breathing, like you can only activate it 3 times. before it explodes at end of turn. And instead of having +1/+2, it has banding in addition to the flying and fire breathing. And it's like, I think it might be the only red creature with banding. I think it is one of the very few. I think there's like 2 or 3 green creatures that have banding, and it's almost exclusively a white ability outside of that. So, they released this card. Yeah, Dragon Con 1994. Okay. They released this card, and Magic players at the time that had their finger on the pulse of Magic lost their minds, because this was a card that you could not open, that you had to be at a very specific event, like only this one event on the East Coast of the United States in 1994 in order to have this card. And the backlash to it was so severe that they not only reissued the card, I think they sent it out with one of the, like, the Duelist magazine at the time. So that way people anywhere that could subscribe to the magazine at least could get it. But not only did they reissue the card, they also, at that point, said they were not going to do this anymore. They weren't going to make exclusive cards. Like, it was this one, and at the time they had the deal with, I think it's Harper Prism, and they had started doing the books. So, like, the first 5 books had promo cards associated with them. The most famous of which is Mana Crypt. That was where original Mana Crypt came from. Hello, Reno. Yes, I do actually have the 94 and the Lafney Dragon. Funny enough, I traded a Mana Crypt for it. I had a Mana Crypt, I traded for the Dragon because the Dragon was even harder to find than Mana Crypt, and then I had to buy another Mana Crypt, like, a year or 2 later. But I bought it like a year or 2 later, so it was fine. Like, it did not kill me to buy the Mana Crypt back then. Also, Mana Crypt had not caught on. It was like I bought it at a convention for, like, I want to say, like, $10 at the time, and that was only because of how rare it was, not because anybody thought it was really good back then. Like, it's a really bad Lucy thing. Really bad Soul Ring was how people treated it at the time. Because it was only legal in Vintage, and a lot of the Vintage decks were very slow, grindy control games, so putting in an artifact that would kill you over time was not actually worth the mana investment, like the mana ramp at the time, when you had access to Soul Ring, 5 Moxes, Black Lotus, all this other stuff. So a lot of people did not care for it, and it wasn't until the 6th edition rules change, right before the 6th edition rules change, it caught on a little bit, because people realized that the way artifacts used to work is continuous abilities on artifacts don't work if the artifact is tapped, and triggers on the upkeep went on the stack in the middle of the upkeep, not at the very beginning, so you could tap the Soul Ring, or not the Soul Ring, the Mana Crypt, before its trigger would go on the stack, and you wouldn't have to flip the coin. That's when it caught on briefly in Vintage, was being able to use it on your upkeep, so you could tap it to activate things like JM Tome, or Millstone, or not Disrupting Scepter, because that's sorcery speed, but like the popular artifacts that people were running in Vintage at the time. So anyway, the Lafney Dragon caused a huge backlash, and they made it easier to get, and they said that they weren't going to do cards like this anymore, where you, like, convention exclusive cards and whatnot, where other Magic players wouldn't be able to get them if they could not attend one specific event in one specific location on this day, this year, while supplies last. So the Walking Dead was the first time since the books and the Lafney Dragon that they printed cards that did not exist in booster packs. And the idea that they had learned this lesson in 1994, and they decided to forget it in, like, 2017, 2018, whenever the Walking Dead set came out for Secret Lair. They decided to just forget that lesson because money. Is one of the worst things that I think Wizards has done for the health of the game in recent memory. Like, even more so than the Universes Beyond and other terrible, terrible decisions that Wizards has been making in the past, like, decade for this game. That one was the one where I'm like, no, this is, we are failing. We are failing Magic right now. Because that is a lesson that I have seen what happens when you forget that lesson in other card games, and it is a misery to play against cards that you literally never could have owned. Things like, prizes for tournaments that they don't print as regular cards for extended periods of time, or sometimes at all, depending on the game. But they're tournament legal, and they're better versions of existing cards or things with unique effects that you could never do otherwise. Like, the Score DBZ card game was terrible for that. The World Champion cards were all backbreakingly powerful, and they had like a moratorium where it took like a year or more for the World Champion card to then get printed as a very hard to get promo after that. So those were all nightmarish. Like, I played the game, I had the World Champion drill, and I had World Champion drill, Champion's belt, cards like You're Invited, but I did not ever get, because they did not print them. There were only like 2 copies of like the DBZ Ultimate Champion, or the GT, when they did the GT sets, the Almighty Light Force Cage and Dragon Fist. I still remember the names of the cards and how ridiculously overpowered they were. And that game hasn't been a thing since, like 2004, I think. So, 20 years ago, and I still remember which ones of these cards were problematic and overpowered, and oh my god, like, and the World Champion, the DBZ Ultimate Champion, you got to choose a card type and your opponent couldn't play that card type for the rest of the game. Like, it's like, imagine if you could play a Magic card that costs 0 mana and said your opponent can't play instants or creatures. And that's just true for the rest of the game. And they either counter it or that effect happens and it's just there for the entire rest of the game. And that's the kind of power level you're looking at from a card that belongs to exactly one person. So, yeah, it's bad. I remember playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And having to track down, like, Cyberstein so that I could have a competitive deck. And my Cyberstein looks worse than my Black Lotus. And my Black Lotus does not look great. I have a very heavily played Black Lotus, but I did manage to grab a Cyberstein back in the day, so that way I would have it so I could keep winning at the local level at Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, no, it's not good, and having the Marvel characters be this hard to get, and having, like, lots of people not be able to get the ones that they wanted, that they would have paid for and had the money for, is very negative for the game and very frustrating for players. Like, I'm not getting the foil versions, but I'm getting them at least. Like, if I could not get them, this is a level of frustration that would actually make me want to bail on the game. And it doesn't really matter how good they actually are for playing with. It matters that if they are good or become good, I won't have them to be able to play with them. Or if I just want to, I'm building commander decks all the time on my channel. Like, that's what I do. Imagine, like, the card isn't great, but nobody wants to part with it because they were so hard to get in the first place. And so they either don't want to part with them or they want a small fortune for them. They want like $150 for like the worst one. And I want to build a commander deck around it. Well, most of the play groups I'm in, like, I don't mind proxies, but some of the play groups that I have been in do. Like, if you don't actually own the card, now they usually let me slide because I have the card, it's just in another deck, so, writing on one of the, like, substitute flip cards from any of the sets that had those, just writing the card's name and casting cost and, like, a little blurb about what it does the same way I do here, um, it is enough because they're like, no, we know you own the card, and it's like, I only have like 4 Woodfall Primuses, and when I build green decks, Woodfall Primus goes in a lot of my green decks, so. Or like, 2 of my decks have Kamal, Fist of Krosa, but apparently I only ever owned 1 of him. So. Alright, that was a half an hour dedicated to ranting about the Marvel thing. So I guess I should go a little longer with deck construction. Alright, so when last we left off, what was the last list that we did? Sorry if you came here for deck building and you got a rant instead. Right, we were doing the Protect My Attackers card, and we had gotten rid of a bunch of the cards that would not save Arabella if they suddenly disappeared in the middle of combat. So that left us with Reconnaissance, Darksteel Plate, Frontline Medic, Mithril Coat, Odric, Basri's +1, Subira, Loyal Unicorn, Tegan, and Brotherhood Regalia. I can see Tegan not making it. We don't have a ton of legendary creatures or artifact creatures. A lot of our things that we're going to be attacking with anyway don't fall into those 2 categories, except for our commander, who is both. So I could see losing her if we needed to make more room, which we technically do, but Frontline Medic could potentially go. Either Frontline Medic or Odric, and I think I like Odric more because if we're attacking en masse, then we can just choose not to have our opponents block, and they can take a ton of damage. So it's not terrible. Reconnaissance is definitely, I think Reconnaissance is the best one because we want to be able to attack with our commander and sometimes with the other creatures too and pull them back. Like, being able to attack with literally everything and then reconnaissance back everything that gets blocked and then reconnaissance back everything that gets that didn't get blocked after damage is dealt to effectively give them all vigilance on top of that is really strong when we have a card like the one from Streets of New Capenna. I'm blanking on the name of it. Rabble Rousing. Rabble Rousing is insane with this. Also really strong with things like Onimpakal, Second Krenko, and any of the other ones that have to attack to make their tokens, so like Handwire Garrison. Yeah, I think that's the strongest one. Yeah, now that I'm saying that out loud, I really want to be able to protect everything if I can. So, I think we can lose Tegan. Little Unicorn is serving pretty much the same purpose, except it affects all of my creatures if I have my commander, which is the main one I'm going to be attacking with Tegan with anyway. Or for Tegan's trigger anyway, so. We lose Tegan. Medic is still fine. Odric is still fine. The nice thing about the Unicorn is that they can't even stifle. Like, they can stifle, but we'll know that they've stifled it, and we don't have to risk losing our stuff. Whereas if we have to attack with everything first and they stifle the medic trigger, it's a lot like destroying Dolmen Gate or exiling Erois mid-combat. Like, I've already committed to the attack, and now all of my stuff is vulnerable. Yeah, I think we can lose Tegan. This is still the token makers. Alright, so we'll get rid of Tegan real quick. And then knock her off the list up here. Down to 171 already. And let's just go through the list, see if there's anything that stands out now that we've done. Like, we've been doing cuts for the past two streams, and I haven't just gone over the list, I don't think, since the end of the last one. Like, the end of the first one, rather. And we're now on, like, part 5, so. I'm sorry, the second one. The first one was just going over all of the cards. The second one was just going through the list and cutting things that no longer made sense after we had the full list to look at. See, cutting and snaring bridge. Goblin trenches is still kind of on the list. That's true. We could do extra combat steps, see if there's any that we really want or any that we can obviously cut at this point. So maybe that one next. I don't know that we actually need Weathered Wayfarer. It's an okay idea in that it's another land tax since we won't be ramping with land, and we don't really ramp that much to begin with in this deck. Our curve is very low to the ground, but being able to actually grab a land or two early on is still going to be important. And it's a creature, so it counts for our commander. But at the same time, it's a creature, so it's vulnerable and might just die before we get to activate it in the early game. Also, we could be going first, and then we won't get to activate it for a little while. Like, we have to wait until somebody actually casts a 2 or 3 drop land ramping spell in order to get ahead. Maybe. Vulcan is fine for right now. Sun Standard is fine for right now. I can see cutting it. There's going to be an issue later on when we get towards the end where I have, like, 4 cards that pay me off for only attacking with Arabella, and, like, 4 cards that pay me off for attacking with everything. And it's going to be, well, which one of these, like, I won't have room for all of each of them. Do I cut all of one of them and try and go all in on the other? Or do I do a mix in case, like, sometimes it's going to be very easy to attack with just Arabella, and sometimes it's going to be very easy to attack with everything. And it's going to come down to which cards do I actually have at the time. Because sometimes we'll be able to make Arabella unblockable, and we just need to get her, like, mass damage trigger on the part, on, like, the other players on the party, on the other players in order to win the game. And sometimes we're going to have really good attacks with everything, and we're going to want to push all of that damage because we've gone wide enough. So, but we don't want to do anything that will stop Arabella from actually winning the game with her damage thing most of the time. If we're just, like, just in case, I don't want to get like, Settle the Wreckage or something and lose all my creatures, and all of a sudden now having, like, Dollmaker's Shop unlocked becomes a bad thing, because once we hit our 3rd creature, Arabella can't trigger anymore. All of your things are 3/3s now. It's like, yeah, it's not great. Because then we have to build back up to, like, everything's a 5/5 or a 6/6 or something in order to start doing damage. And at the same time, though, I don't really want to cut the shop because attacking with other creatures gives me another 1/1. And there will be times where we just unlock the other side and win the game, so. Or at least force somebody to kill the enchantment so that they don't lose right there, rather than having to kill all of our creatures at instant speed. I definitely want Master Warcraft. Do like Daring in the deck. I'm starting to wonder, though, if we want to cut the other one, the first response. Steer Command is good. Cloud Goat Ranger is still on my list of cards that can probably get cut just because the Ranger itself is not a 2 power or less creature, and we have multiple other creatures like him where the main body is also 2 or less power. Tutor, Revelark, Dorgar, Aggression, Knight Captain of Eos, Stoneforge is still fine for right now. I wonder if we don't need the cards like Raid Bombardment and Cavalcade of Calamity. They're good for adding extra damage when we're going wide. Like, it's kind of like a mass pump spell that doesn't care if it goes away, because we still get the extra damage in for having turned our guys sideways in the first place. I could see cutting both of them, though. Elspeth is fine for right now. Maybe I need to do our card advantage cards, too. Like, make sure we don't have, like, too many of them that are only okay, and we cut the ones that are the least impressive. Because I'm looking at, like, Mentor of the Meek here, and it's definitely fine, but we have a whole bunch of cards very similar to it on the list, so maybe we only need, like, 5 of them instead of probably the 10 or so that we have. Hellrider falls into the same category as Raid Bombardment and Cavalcade, except it doesn't care about the power of the creature that's attacking. So our handful of larger creatures still get in for extra damage. Definitely see cutting Gisela. Like, I think she's the worst of our damage doublers just because of her mana cost and the low curve of the deck. In fact, yeah, I can definitely see cutting her just because of the mana cost. Also, we don't actually need her. Like, we're not overly concerned about us taking damage, so Gisela's not that important for that. And she also, because she's such a large creature, doesn't count for Arabella on top of that. So we can just lean on the other damage doublers at that point. Legion is fine, really for extra combat steps. One's Champion is probably the best Planeswalker in our deck. Just because it's plussing to make 3/1/1s, so... Perforos is fine for right now. I don't know how badly we want Impact Tremors effects. We only have 2 on the list right now. It's just Perforos and the small creature one from the Commander version of Bloomburrow that can make another one of itself. Offspring. Here the Waste definitely stays. Garrison might leave. We had this discussion yesterday. The problem with Garrison versus something like Krenko is Garrison is non-legendary and therefore can get cloned by our Kiki cards, and then the clones can attack safely and make the extra tokens. And when we're in a situation where we can attack with everything, you know, having 2 Garrisons is better than attacking with one of the Kiki variants. As far as Arabella's triggers go, so... I would kind of like to keep Garrison if we can. Visionary Augmenter. This is the one where if it comes down to it, we keep the Augmenter over the Cloud Goat Ranger, because it's a 2/1 that makes 2/1/1s as opposed to a 3/3 that makes 2/1/1 or 3/1/1s rather, and it's 1 mana cheaper. And I don't really care about the Cloud Goat Ranger being able to fly. It's possible we cut the Guardian and Village Bellringer combos. They only go infinite with Kiki, which I'm actually okay with. I like having one way to win the game against somebody who's gained infinite life, besides having to connect with Arabella 21 times. So... it's nice to have a way to do that, and it's really powerful when I'm not going infinite. The problem with this one is it does not work well with Reflection of Kiki Jiki or Jaxus. It works perfectly fine with regular Kiki for the infinite combo, but also the Jolly Balloon Man for the non-infinite version. Whereas Village Bellringer works with all of them for that thing, so... But the Felidar Guardian can also blink one of our token makers to as a counterpoint to, well, we can blink everything with the Guardian, or we can untap everything with the Bell Ringer. Well, sometimes blinking things with the Guardian is fine. But yeah, maybe we do lose the Guardian at that point and just keep the Bell Ringer. Because it serves the primary purpose that the two of them are in there for better, while still being good enough when the fail case happens. Definitely want Anointed Procession. Combat Celebrant is another one of the extra combat steps. Yeah, I need to look at the extra combat steps and the damage doublers. Maybe Legion's Landing isn't quite good enough. It is a nice way to get a mana source in this deck, like essentially ramping by casting it on turn 1 or, turn 3 or whatever and attacking with 3 creatures, which the deck is very capable of doing. But I don't know that we need it. Hope for card draw. Pay for the extra damage. Yeah, definitely want Annex. Having our creatures die into more creatures is super helpful when our opponents are trying to Wrath and we don't have a way to stop them. Especially if we've had to use up our protect our things from any kind of Wrath to stop, exiling effects. Mention Winota. Still have enough humans and enough high casting cost humans that Winota is still fine. Pretty sure we cut the Emeria because I don't remember the retreat to Emeria. I think I still want the Felidar retreat though. Like making tokens on landfall is still too good. Pass up on entirely. Cry Goblin's still close to getting cut. Savior is still fine. Like everything I said about why he's in the deck still holds true. We haven't cut any of the cards that make him good. Vampire, Fable the Mirror Breaker, Farewell. Alright, the more I look at this, so we cut Gisela off of the list, and then I think I need to do our card draw as a sub list, and some of the other ones too, like the extra combat steps and or the damage doublers. So let's look for the card advantage cards first. Land tax is more fixing our mana and making sure we don't fall too far behind in land count. It does put cards from our deck into our hand, which is why I can see it being listed under card draw, but it's not quite that. Like, its purpose is not to put extra cards in our hand, it's to make sure we hit land drops. So, in that way, it's more of. It's not ramp because it's not accelerating, but it's making sure we don't miss land drops, so. None of these are card draw. Standard Lightning Greaves. Okay, Skull Clamp and Wall of Lost Dreams definitely make the cut. Sad Robot is a single card draw, so unless we're copying him with a Kiki effect, he's not card draw. He's close though because of the number of effects we have like that. Maybe I do add him to the list just because of that. Top is more card selection. These. Exile, no. Stoneforge, no. Some order while we're doing this. Mentor of the Meek, yes. No. Those. Nope. No, none of those. There was one down here, though, that made me think, oh, Dawn of Hope. Probably it. I feel like that was one of the ones where I got to. No, it wasn't quite Dawn of Hope, was it? We were still a little deeper. Yoda, Felidar Retreat, Magda, no. Yeah, maybe Welcoming Vampire was where I finally decided I need to look at all of the card draw that we have. And these two. Gondor. Oh, Minas Tirith lets us draw cards if we can attack with 2 or more creatures in a turn. That does make it. Ring, yes. Dots gives us a lot of cards. Caretaker's Talent. During Innocence. These so far. Excuse me. Subira, technically, yes. She can discard my hand to let me draw a bunch of cards if I connect with damage. A Recruiter, no. Prelate, Gift. Ragavan gives us access to our opponent's cards, but that's not quite what I'm looking for. Like, yes, I will actually use Ragavan to steal their cards, especially if they have, you know, the things that I'm looking for, like things that make a bunch of little creatures. But Ragavan is partially in here to make treasure early on, and partially in here to maybe steal a removal spell or an interactive piece from our opponents, so that way we have something extra to work with. Not go to the Pride, Port Razor, Karlak, no. They're card advantage cards. Idol of Oblivion, yes. Benny, yes. Chivalric Alliance. Fourth Aerolingus gives us the Monarch, but that's not really a thing that I want necessarily. Like, I'm going to run it because it makes a large number of 2-power creatures, so it does work with the deck. But and like taking the monarchy is like having the monarchy is not the worst thing in the world, considering our deck has a massive go wide ability, so we should be able to block and stop them from taking the monarchy if we really needed to, or just steal it back by going around all of their creatures. It's not an essential part of the strategy, and it's not why Fourth Aerolingus is in the deck, so counting it as card advantage seems a little disingenuous at that point. Instigator, Spike Corridor, no. None of those. Okay, so we have all of our card draw now. Here. Sad Robot up here. Actually comes from and for Dawn Vampire. Two Tirith, the One Ring. Okay, so that's all of them. So, which ones of these are not at their best compared to the other ones? So, Sad Robot is kind of medium in this deck. Once we're at 4 mana, we're kind of close to the most amount of mana we need. I think, like, I want to be able to get to 6 consistently with this deck, and then everything after that is either a bonus or flooding out, depending on the situation. I want to be able to reasonably get to 6 by like turn 7 or 8. Skullclamp has the most potential to draw cards because we're not buffing any of our creatures permanently, so we should be able to eat as many of our 1/1s as we need to find the things that we're looking for. Well of Lost Dreams lets us draw a huge amount of cards by paying mana whenever Arabella attacks. Mentor of the Meek is once per creature, and I have to pay 1. See, I'm worried about Mentor of the Meek and Symmetry Matrix because we might not have any extra mana when we cast. You know, if I'm casting Siege Gang Commander and I'm already saying that I want to I want to get to 6 mana, but I think like that's the minimum I need to get to, and then once we get past that, it's not essential. That would mean that we would get to draw 1 card off of Siege Gang Commander, despite all 3 of them coming into play. But that's also true of Welcoming Vampire and Tokasha's Welcome and Enduring Innocence, because all 3 of them can only trigger once per turn. So the trade-off is guaranteeing they trigger regardless of my mana situation versus Mentor of the Meek and Symmetry Matrix, which both require me to pay an additional mana per creature, but can trigger multiple times in the same turn. And I'm genuinely not sure which one of them I would want more. Like, I feel like this is one of those ones where I would have to play with the deck more to know for sure that, like, if I consistently have a couple extra mana lying around whenever I cast one of my Make Multiple Creatures cards, then I kind of want the Symmetry Matrix and the Mentor. But if I don't, and I'm kind of inclined to think that I won't have 2+ mana lying around whenever I cast one of the things that makes multiple bodies, then I'm more inclined to a Welcoming Vampire or Tocacious Welcome. I think I can lose Symmetry Matrix. The downside to losing the non-creature ones is that if my board gets wiped, that's when I might need to get some extra cards in order to buy my way back into it. So having my board get wiped and losing my card advantage card is a little bit rough. But at the same time, the creatures all count for Arabella. Like Mentor, Welcoming, and Innocence are all 2 power or less creatures. So I think I can lose the Symmetry Matrix. It also doesn't work on every single one of my creatures. Um, it is weird that it works on some of the ones that Mentor doesn't work on, though. Like, if we kept the Cloud Goat Ranger, for example, or if we run Hellrider, they have power equal to toughness, so they would trigger Symmetry Matrix, but not Mentor of the Meek. But by the same token, cards like Welcoming Vampire and Jolly Balloon Man and whatnot don't trigger Symmetry Matrix, but do trigger Mentor. I am trying to err on the side of smaller creatures, though. So I'm way more likely to make a lot of small creatures that can trigger Mentor, even with some of my larger creatures, than I am to have square stats every single time. I think. Yeah, I'm wondering what kind of mix I want for all of these card draw effects. Like, I definitely want to keep the Skull Clamp and the Well of Lost Dreams because I think they let me draw a ton of cards consistently with this deck. The One Ring lets me draw a handful of cards over time. Like, we get one draw, then 2 draws, and so on. And I think we can pretty comfortably get, like, up to 5 counters on the One Ring before it starts becoming problematic. And we do have a few ways to get rid of it, so. But yeah, even if somebody wraths the board and we're not gaining like 5 life a turn anymore, I'm pretty sure we can take a few hits from the One Ring. And if we just got our board wrath, we might have to bump it up to 6 in order to rebuild, but that's a fresh grip of cards at that point, so. But yeah, I do think the One Ring stays. I like connecting the dots because we can cash it in later on. Like, as long as we can attack with a bunch of things for one turn safely, then connecting the dots becomes a bank of cards that we just have access to later on. Caretaker's Talent will almost always draw us a card per turn. Like, even more so than things like the Welcoming Vampire. I guess they're about the same because I'm not making tokens that are out of range of the various welcomes and whatnot, so. Like, I'm intentionally not making large tokens normally. I wonder if it's Benny then, because Benny, he's contingent on tokens, which is fine, except for the fact that he's a 4 mana 3/2, and we have access to a bunch of other. Now, granted, he has Convoke, so he's not that hard to cast, but he's going to be about as hard to cast as any of the other ones that we have to begin with, and he's only drawing me cards when I make tokens, which is still fine. Like, sometimes I will make tokens on the opponent's turn, and we will get to trigger Benny the same way we will trigger like Idol of Oblivion and Welcoming Vampire on their turn and Caretaker's Talent on their turn. So he's not unreasonable, but I think we have enough overlap in the drawing cards because I made a token effect or a small creature, because all of our creatures are going to be small, and a lot of them are going to make small tokens. So I think I would rather have the small creatures draw me cards than the tokens draw me cards specifically at that point. Okay, we're at the hour mark, but I'm going to push a little longer because I ranted about the whole Marvel Secret Lair thing. Even though my voice, like I said, I let out a sound that shredded my vocal cords yesterday when it tried to kick me out for buying the non-foil one after it wouldn't let me buy the foil one that I was already enraged about. So, go just a little bit longer. Make up for it a bit. Like, all of our card draws rewarding me for, like, things that we're doing anyway, making small creatures. Like, we primarily make 1/1s and 2/2s. So everything that rewards me for small creatures, tokens, and even creatures with square stats because of the symmetry matrix, all of them are going to trigger a lot during any given game where we're doing anything relevant at all with our deck. Like, all of these should be fine. So it's just a question of which ones can we afford to cut, because we don't have room for everything in any of our subcategories because we have way too many cards on the list. Like, I'm wondering if we actually lose Idol of Oblivion because of the other ones getting to trigger. We have to tap to draw a card with Idol, so we're always going to get to draw a card per turn cycle with it. But I'm wondering if, because we can draw more than one card per turn cycle with some of the other ones that are just a little bit more expensive, if we don't want to cut the Idol to leave room for things like Welcoming Vampire and Enduring Innocence at that point. Yeah, I can see that, because the Caretaker's Talent will let us draw the card every turn that we can make a token, so as long as we can make one token on our turn anyway, we're getting the same card draw that we would from Idol of Oblivion, and if we ever make one on our opponent's turn also, then we get another card draw. So I think the potential for extra cards is worth the one more mana over running Idol of Oblivion at that point. Yeah, I'm thinking because of how low to the ground we are, maybe we do cut Mentor of the Meek then. Like, yeah, it's going to suck when we have Welcoming Vampire and we cast like a 4-drop creature that makes 2/1/1s and we had 2 mana left over and we could have drawn 2 cards instead of 1. But I think more often than not we're going to be tapping out for stuff and not having the extra mana, or only having 1 extra mana, or maybe even wanting that mana to hold up like a Swords to Plowshares or something. And this way we get to draw our card and still hold up swords, and it's not even like, oh, why do I need the mana all of a sudden? What tricks do I have? So yeah, I think we lose Mentor of the Meek and Symmetry Matrix for that reason, and keep the Welcoming Vampire, Tocacious Welcome, and Enduring Innocence, plus the Caretaker's Talent. Subira's in here to make our commander unblockable anyway, and the fact that she can also let us draw cards means that she's fine to stay on the list. I think this might finally be the deck where we keep Subira all the way through, because there have been a lot of decks where I've been like, okay, I have small creatures I want to be able to attack with, and Subira can technically let me draw cards, but this deck might be the, like, it's low enough to the ground where I can potentially expend my whole hand and run out of cards and need to refill. So investing a bunch of mana into Subira, like spending like 4 or 5 mana on Subira, and then having 3 of my creatures be unblockable and no hand to discard, so I just get in for 3 extra cards. Seems good. Also, there will be times where she makes our commander unblockable, and then all those exalted effects happen, and we just kill the opponent. So, alright, so we lose these 4. Symmetry Matrix. Alright, 2 M's for Symmetry. Okay, then we get rid of Benny. Sorry, Benny. Idol. No, not of Endurance. Almost made the same mistake I made with the Lean and Sun Standard the other day when getting rid of Lean and War Leader. And Mentor of the Meek. Also only 1 result. Okay. Alright, so we cut those 4 off the list. Brings us down to 166. Clear all. Alright, let's do the extra combat steps, I guess, and then the damage doublers, and then we'll have both of those separated out. Here, Sacred Mesa, Reconnaissance, Bridge. Okay, Ancient Tomb did have a land denotation next to it. Alright, so there's Aggravated Assault, so let's do the extra combat steps first then, since I found that one before Gratuitous Violence. Sorry, Gratuitous Violence. You are alphabetically second, and therefore your entire subcategory goes second. Let's see, extra combat steps. Waves of Aggression. We don't have a ton of them, but we do have enough that we probably don't need all of them. There's Aurelia. Combat Celebrant. Oops. These. Extra combat steps. No. Nope. Oops. Sorry, one finger's a little twitchy. I keep hitting the right click. Endril, Horn of Gondor, Coat, Reprieve, Battle, no. Alright. These give me extra steps. There's Fear of Missing Out. Recruiter, Sun Titan, no. No. Recruiter of the Guard, Sanctum Prelate, no. Those. Court Razor does. Oops. Karlach does. Hexplate rather does. No. Fix that while we're here. Back to Rabbit, no. Corridor, no. Overpowering attack, yes. Yeah, we're up to 9, so not a lot, but we probably don't need all of them, so. Alright, extra combat. Aggravated assault. Waves. Aurelia. Combat. FOMO. Foot Razor. Karlach. Hexplate. And attack. So clear all. So let's see. Aggravated Assault is repeatable at 5 mana to activate. Waves of Aggression is repeatable by discarding a land while it's in my graveyard, paying its casting cost again. Yeah. Combat Celebrant is only repeatable if it lives. Same thing for Fear of Missing Out. Technically, same thing for Port Razor and Karlach and Aurelia too. But Combat Celebrant's a 4/1, whereas all of the other ones actually have toughness. So, potentially can live and get me an extra combat step. Again. Alright, so Port Razor has to hit. So we would need to make the Port Razor unblockable and have a clean attack with Arabella in order to just basically wheel our way around the board until everybody's dead. No, I attack with my unblockable Port Razor against you and Arabella, and everybody takes a bunch of damage. And then I attack the Port Razor on the next player and throw the Arabella at the first one, because she could attack that through that player anyway. So we need to have a clean attack with something. In order for Port Razor to actually manage to kill the entire table. And we can only really make him unblockable with Rogue's Passage, because he's too big for all the other ones. Yeah, I think Port Razor goes. I think he's the weakest one. I think Port Razor goes. I think Combat Celebrant goes too. Technically, Combat Celebrant's the weakest one. Because even if we can untap it, we don't get to exert it again, so. FOMO can only target Arabella, but it's also the cheapest one, and it gives us a tiny bit of rummaging. I guess that's still low enough impact, though. It's very tempting to cut FOMO at this point. Definitely those two, though. I think they're the weakest ones on the list. But Aurelia and Karlach both just need to attack to do their cool thing. So I like their odds more. The free running, I have to have dealt combat damage with my commander, but if I'm getting in for combat damage with Arabella, that's when I most want extra combat steps. So We can move the wall breaker around, like if the creature it's on dies, we still get to move it to another creature and get extra combat steps, so that one's fine. I think the remaining ones are fine, but we might need to cut more of them later just to make room. Combat Celebrant. Oh, right. Combat's kind of... Okay, that brings us back down to 1. So we lose that one. Port Razor. Alright, also the only one on the list. Alright, so we cut both of those two. 164. Clear all. Alright, I'm gonna grab the damage doublers, but I think we'll call it after I make the sub list, so let's just find all of them. So we start with Onslaught. There we had Gratuitous Violence. We'll try and grab all the multipliers and the additive damage ones too, since that's what they're functionally in here for. Even though I don't have a lot of the damage additive ones. Damage multipliers. I didn't miss any, right? Like, I've been going through... My brain kind of wandered off there near the end, but I don't think we passed any damage multipliers yet. Yeah, I don't think so. Aurelia, Frontline, no. Perforos, no. Garrison, Belladar, no. Right, none of these were damage multipliers either. Okay. Yep. Adeline, Savior, no. Axis, Rabble Rousing. Okay, there's Sulfim. Found another one. City on Fire. Okay, them. This list. A Roaming Throne, no. Delnay, no. Ty adds damage, so we include her. Caretaker's Talent, no. Mo, Balloon Man, no. Franco, Audric. Yeah, Incinerator doesn't actually add to damage, just lets me kill opponents' creatures when I'm dealing damage to them. Fiery Emancipation. No. Johnny, Ocelot. No. Concealment. No. No. Static Conqueror. Absence. Ride at Dawn. Alright, the Spike Corridor. Technically the Torture Pit adds to damage. Miss anything else from the Commander stuff? I know a lot of it wasn't damage doubling. Okay. I don't seem to have. Okay. Those, and then we have Fiendish Duo and Goblin Goliath. Copy them. Pop down here. Alright, Sulfum, you're not letting me get to the things below you. We're going to post you and then delete you. And there we go. Gratuitous violence. On fire. Emancipation. I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's even lower than I thought it was. And I knew we didn't have that many. I gotta be honest, Spike Corridor is kind of underwhelming. Like, both sides of it are fine and are doing things we want, but neither side is so good that I think we need it, so... I think we lose that one. It's tempting to cut the Goliath. The only thing is, it also is a creature token maker on top of that, so it's going to make 2 to 3 1/1s when it comes into play. I could see keeping it. Even though it's 6 mana to cast and 4 mana to activate, so it's kind of eating up a lot of our resources to do that every turn. Also, we do actually have to activate it, so if a source is going to deal damage to my opponents on a different turn, then we miss out on the extra damage, whereas something like Fiendish Duo, we just have it, and it does the extra damage, and we move on with our lives. For the same reason, maybe we don't need Tie. Yeah, we can probably lose Tie. It is nice, though, when I don't have anything else to do with the mana, to just put them all, like, put all of the mana into Tie, and then attack with Arabella, and deal X extra damage to each opponent. Like, being able to fireball every time I do non-combat damage to my opponent seems decent when I can do mass damage, so... Yeah, I don't know how often, if at all, though, I'm ever going to do the card draw thing, because the only real ways we have to deal damage to our opponent's creatures are things like the Incinerator. Like, normally we're just killing them with removal spells instead. Yeah, Tie's fine, but I don't think we actually need her for what she's in the deck for. Alright, we'll bump these two off of the list real quick. Spike Corridor. What's the other spiked card? Ah, we have the Corridor on one of the sublists. Right, because it's also a token maker. I didn't have to cut it, but I guess I will. Alright, so we pop back up here, bump those two off the list, and we'll call it there for right now. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Have a good rest of your day.